is have Stephanie Kelton come up and introduce her film that we are going to move into the auditorium to hear and to watch immediately thereafter. So Stephanie Kelton is a professor at Stoney Brook. She's a Sanders Institute fellow and a wonderful human being and very talented. So thank you for coming. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Jane and Dave and Bernie. It is so nice to be back in Burlington for a second, and I hope second of many to come, gatherings of this kind. We've heard some electric speakers today, yes? Electrifying. I was going to be electrifying. And then Sarah Nelson gave me a Benadryl to help with my allergies. And now I'm going to go take a nap. So look, this is great. I love this because I feel like I'm at home when I come into a room filled with people like you, big thinkers. When I worked briefly for Senator Sanders in the Senate, I remember he would come in, we would have staff meetings, he would sit down, and he would always start by asking the staffers, what should we be doing? What should we be doing? He wanted to hear from us. And then he would say, I want you to think big, not small. People were suffering. People are suffering. And he was so intensely sensitive to the suffering going on across this country and around the world. And he didn't want us to tinker at the edges and nibble away at the problem in ways that would make life less bad for people. He wanted real improvements, material improvements in people's lives. And I had so much respect for that, and I have enormous respect for the people who come to gatherings like this to bring their big ideas, to share thoughts about what we can do to make meaningful change in this country. And so, I am in this fight with you, both as an academic, writing about things like poverty, inequality, Social Security, joblessness, the climate, the Federal Reserve, fiscal policy. But I'm also something of an agitator. And I hope that that will come through when we get an opportunity, and I hope you'll join us and go next door for this documentary, because when I look at the problems that we're facing, and I ask myself, what can I bring to the fight, right? What can I contribute? What can I offer? I think because of my training as a macroeconomist and with expertise in finance and the monetary system and those sorts of things, these are issues of such importance, but so many people don't understand them. It seems too complicated. We've heard, and we talked just now about the media and the role of the media, and I'll say it, I think the population has been indoctrinated. I think we've been misinformed, ill-informed, lied to about what our capacity to do in terms of Congress, federal legislation, fiscal policy, the F word that for too long we put in the box, and we didn't talk about fiscal policy. We just said it's the Federal Reserve's job, it's monetary policy. Whatever goes wrong in the economy, the Federal Reserve is supposed to fix it. Unemployment, inflation, maintaining a healthy labor market, and so forth. I think monetary policy is the weak tea. It is the weakest tool, and it probably doesn't work the way they think it works. The powerful tool is fiscal policy, and we've got to get comfortable with the idea of using the F word again. And I think COVID did so much to remind us of the relative power of monetary and fiscal policies. Fiscal policy is where it is at. Remember the Great Recession, the financial crisis, the implosion of the housing market with the subprime mortgages and all of the fraud that ran through the system. That was a crisis. The downturn was as severe as anything we had experienced since the Great Depression. We lost about 9 million jobs. It took roughly 7 years to claw them all back. We got scared of the F word, of fiscal policy. We saw the deficit increase. The national media told us we had a debt crisis. We were going to end up like Greece. We were burdening future generations. The grandchildren would have a heavy bill to pay because of the spending that was done to deal in part with the crisis. But we didn't deal with the crisis. We got the Simpson-Bowles Commission, the Cat Food Commission, as I like to call it, that would have cut Social Security, Medicare, the sequester with the caps on spending. We had a very anemic recovery that didn't feel like a recovery for millions and millions of people. When the jobs finally came back, we know now that they were inferior to the jobs that were lost. In almost every single case, as the jobs were restored, they were lower wage and lower hour jobs. People were worse off, not better off, as the jobs came back. And when Barack Obama was asked, well, how are we going to deal with rescuing the economy, shoring up people's lives and livelihoods? Can we afford it? He said, and I quote, "We're out of money. We're out of money." That was at the start of his first term in office. And it was like a punch in the gut for me because I knew how wrong that was. We were not out of money. We get Donald Trump, right? After Obama's 8 years, we get Donald Trump as president. What do the Republicans come in and do? Cut taxes. They don't care about the fiscal or budgetary impacts. They want to pass their agenda. So we get sweeping tax cuts. CBO says the tax cuts will add $1.9 trillion to the deficit. Republicans shrug and say, who cares? On the other side of the government deficit lies a financial windfall for somebody else. Every deficit is good for someone. The question is for whom and for what, right? And that's something that the media doesn't remind us of. And so I would hope that we can learn that lesson. So move on from Donald Trump. Here comes COVID. We've been told that because of the Republican tax cuts, there won't be any money to do anything if we face a crisis in the future. If the economy slows down, if there's a war, there's no money because the Republicans let it all go with their tax cuts. Big lie, huge lie, repeated by many Democrats, including former Treasury secretaries. Well, how do we know it was a lie? Because COVID happened. And when COVID happened, Donald Trump is president, Democrats have the House, Republicans have the Senate, and what do? March of 2020, a $2.2 trillion fiscal package called the CARES Act sent money to most families in this country, unemployment benefits at $600 a week, $2,400 a month. Some people in this country, millions in fact, had more money unemployed than they ever had working in their lives. Many, for the first time, reached the end of the month with money left in the bank. They were able to save something for the first time in their lives. Fiscal policy. Months later, in December, a $900 billion fiscal package, followed in March of 2021, Democrats only passing the American Rescue Plan Act. $1.9 trillion. Add those three numbers together, what do you get? $5 trillion going out the door in 12 months' time. Incredible. We cut child poverty by roughly 40%, and you can talk on and on about the benefits, because every deficit is good for someone. The question is for whom, and where does the windfall on the other side of the government deficit go? In March of 2021, it went to the bottom 99% of people living in this country. That's who it helped. The Republicans did $1.9 trillion with their tax cuts. Where did it go? 83% of the benefits went to people in the top 1% of the income distribution. It's not about the deficit and whether you have it or don't have it. Every deficit is good for someone. Who benefits, and what are those deficits being used to accomplish? Now we're using the deficit to do infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the CHIPS and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act, the biggest climate legislation we've ever had. All three pieces of legislation are powering this economy forward. Is it working for everyone? No. And we spent the whole day talking about acute problems in this economy, in housing, in healthcare, and everything else. Is it working for everyone? No. But is there a better tool to deploy in the interest of rebuilding, repairing this economy and creating one that works for everyone? No, there is not. There is no alternative to using fiscal policy. And so I ended up being the subject of a documentary. I didn't realize it at the time. I was just asked to sit for a few interviews, which I agreed to do. I didn't know, and maybe the filmmaker didn't know either, that she would end up putting together a film that revolved largely around my intellectual journey, because it took me a while to arrive at the place where I understood things the way I do today. And so I invite you to go next door, where the director of the film has a short video. Her name is Maren Poitras. She's going to introduce the film. And then I feel really happy and privileged to be joined for the Q&A by Josh Farley, who's a professor here at the University of Vermont, professor of ecological economics. So all of the hard questions go to him. And I would love to walk next door with you and watch the film. Thank you so much.